Hi, folks. I'm Peter Lemieux from the Insurance Exam Queen. Um, and I'm not the Insurance Exam Queen. I am a friend of Melissa Dillon who has been working with her for, I don't know, maybe a year or two now. Actually, I worked with her for about 15 years at another place. So that's why I'm here, partially. Why I'm really here today is to go over some ideas for you on how to pass the test. Usually when I come to these classes, I try to teach something about insurance, health insurance, property and casualty, life insurance, information that you're going to need to know to pass the test. I'm not doing that today. Today, I'm just going to talk about the test and things you need to know about taking the test. I have taught this class in a more extended form. And I believe the information in this class can help you raise your grade 4 to 6 points. Now, who am I talking to? That person that took the state exam and got a 50, this class isn't for you. You need to study more. You don't really understand the basics of insurance. I'm talking about the people who studied, thought they were prepared, went in and got a 63, 64, and were surprised that they did so poorly. I'm talking to those people who, after studying hard and thinking they've got it, do a practice exam and look at questions and say, I don't understand the question. I don't understand where the question's coming from. This is the class for those people. If you're one of them or you just want to know some information, that's what we're going to do. So let me talk about this, okay? I am reading the chats. I realize you can't talk to me, so I have to stop and read. This class talks about tips you can do when you get questions that you've never seen or heard before and you don't know what they're talking about. There's a certain game that's played in taking a test. So a quick little personal story. I sat down with my, I guess at the time he was maybe 12 or 13 years old, grandson. And he said, Grandpa, do you want to play a game called Stratego? I had never played it. It's a game. What am I going to do? I said, sure, let's do it. And he briefly told me the rules. But this kid's very, very smart. He briefly told me the rules. So we played and he destroyed me. When the game was over, he said to me, I've never lost this game. And I realized he knows more of the rules than I did. Now, I don't really care about beating him. That's not the point. The point is, if you don't know the rules of the game, you can't win. And there are certain rules to taking a test. And we're going to look at them for a little while here this afternoon. And hopefully that will be helpful. Now, what I did is I prepared a slideshow for me to keep me on track and remind me the things I certainly want to cover. Now, sometimes people say, hey, that's a good slide. Can I have a copy of it? The short answer is no. The correct answer is all you need to do is take a picture of the slide or a screenshot. Okay. So that's how you can, if not on all the slides, but slides that say that information's helpful to me, have at it. You see, our goal at the Insurance Exam Queen is really singular. We just want you folks to pass the test. Okay. And so that's why this class was created, to help you pass the test. Now, let me pull up, if you'll excuse me for a minute, I want to pull up the slides. There we go. That's the title of our course. Now, what's the matter here? Live in 54 minutes. I'm not dead, so I'm live now. Maybe it's the time zone thing. This class is supposed to start at 5 p.m. Central Time. Well, I don't know if the people who listed it put it as 5 p.m. Mountain Time or whatever, but I apologize if that's a problem. Home office 256. But I'm going live now, and I can't change that. Okay. So here's the title: How to Handle and Respond to Test Questions. So, what I want to see, first of all, this is a little bit about me. I have prepared. What's going on? Excuse me. Technical wizard, I'm not. I prepared a course on life and health insurance where I teach every single chapter. Um, it's similar to Melissa's gold package. I'm not trying to compete with her. She doesn't want me to compete with her or anything like that. We just teach a little differently. So what we've done with the course I taught is we've made it available for a very reasonable amount. What you need to do is go on the YouTube and Insurance Exam Queen, and on Melissa's screen, there'll be two buttons. One says subscribe and one says join. If you click the join button, you will see the offer. You can get all of the classes I prepared for 25 and some change, about $25, $26 a month. And you use them as you can. And when you're done, you just cancel the subscription. But this is a pretty reasonable, low cost way for you to have access to whatever chapters you want to know more taught by me. So that's my commercial. The other thing is that there's something called a super chat when we do these shows. If you so inclined to give a super chat, this is like a tip you'd give a waiter or something like that. If we're helping you and you want to contribute to the cause, you can just do a super chat. That's one of two ads that I'm going to do. The other ad's going to be the same thing. Okay, let's get started. Preparation for the test. Preparation absolutely is the key. So when we're preparing, this is just general advice. I haven't gotten into the test stuff yet. You should be reviewing your notes every single day. I got to read these chats, see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to assume you guys are talking to each other. Some of those I don't know if I can help you, but let's get back to this. You take notes. You have notes you want to study. You should be reading, maybe not all your notes, but you should be reading some notes every single day to keep your mind on the topic. Review your classmates' notes when they're fresh. For example, if you're going to take notes today, sometime in the next 24 hours, you should review them while they're fresh, okay? You have to make time to study. You can't do it between TV shows or streaming services or text. You just got to make some time and 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 put your mind to it. You have to start studying. This is worst case scenario, at least 1 week before your test. Personally, I'd like to see it more, maybe a little more time than that, but at least 1 week before. Mind your notes. Review your notes, go over your notes, organize your notes, highlight your notes, rewrite your notes. And the one I like the most is make your own flashcards. I say this in almost every class I teach. When you make your own flashcard, you just are using more senses. So you got the card, you write the question, you write the answer. So you're writing, you're seeing, and you got the flashcard. Once you have the flashcards, you should read your flashcards. It's going to sound stupid, but stupid works. You should read your flashcards out loud every day. I had a stack of flashcards about yay thick. Okay. Every day I went in my office, I shut the door, and I just read the question. I read the answer. Bing, 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 out loud. What am I doing? I'm seeing that and I'm hearing it. Okay. Um, Took me about 6 minutes. I mean, we're not talking about 2 hours of time. That's really how actors memorize their lines for plays. You see it, you hear it, you say it frequently. I was so intent on passing this test, I read my flashcards out loud every day, 3 times a day. Ooh, he must have been serious. I was. It's real simple. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Every time I finished eating, I took 6 minutes and read the cards. Okay. When I got to the test, there was nothing on those cards that I didn't know. Okay. So that's just a thought on my end. Little tip. You got to know the material. You got to understand the material. Now, people who fall short of this are the people who prepare for a test only by doing practice exams. So what you're doing when you only do, I'm not against practice exams, but if that's all you do, what you end up doing is memorizing questions. And if you get that exact question on the test, you're good. Here's a tip. You won't. We don't have the exact questions from the test. You have to know the material. So if they change the wording around or ask it in a different way, you're not thrown off because you understand the material. That's why listening to our classes and watching our videos, we emphasize the material, not just test questions. The more you understand the material, the easier the questions are. Now, the day of the test, you want to relax. If you've studied, you're prepared, just relax. You got this. Eat before the test and arrive early. Now, a simple thing about eat something healthy. Okay. Save the burrito for after you pass the test. Okay. Eat something healthy, protein, something light so that your brain is alert for the hour and a half or 2 hours you're going to put into the test. Now, what we're going to talk about for the rest of the day is how to handle and respond to test questions. You see, everybody has different ways of studying. We're not going to tell you how to study other than the flashcards. We're not going to tell you how to study. Whatever got you through school, keep using that technique. It worked for you in school, it'll work for you here. But we're just going to give you some ideas to help improve your study skills. Multiple choice test tips. On the test, do not skip around. The danger with that, looking for a question I know, if you leave a question unanswered and you don't get back to it, that's a loss. That's counted as incorrect. You should do one question at a time, put down the best you can do, and do another one. Don't skip questions. I've got another piece of advice when the test is over about how to correct mistakes, but don't skip questions. On a test question, don't linger on one question. I want to be clear on this. I do want you to take your time. People miss questions because they're trying to go too fast. This is not a speed test. In fact, I'm going to encourage you to read the question slowly 2 times before you look at the answers. And when you finish reading it twice, just say, "What's the question?" Sometimes they'll bury you in a lot of words and you're not sure what the question is. And then you find which of the 4 answers answers that question. Okay. Now, that whole process sounds like it'll take a long time. It might take 15 seconds. Okay. Even reading slowly 2 times and reading every single answer, you're not going to take very long. If you're sitting on a question for a minute or two, way too long, you're wasting time. Do the best you can and move on to the next question. All right. Um, when you're not sure of a question, one answer is going to feel most correct to you. Go with it. I say trust your gut, okay? You've studied hard. This feels correct. You've done all the tips I'm going to be giving you, and it still looks like this is the right answer. Believe in yourself and go with it. Do's and don'ts. Do not look for the questions to fall into a pattern. That would be the person that says, I've answered A twice in a row. This can't be A. There's no pattern. It can be anything they want it to be. Never leave an answer blank. Now, when you're finished, before you click that submit button or turn your test in, you want to review your answers. On tests on the computers, you have the ability to mark a question you're not sure of. And I did that. Any question I had a littlest bit of, maybe I didn't get that right, mark it. Now, when I finish the test and I have a chance to review the questions, I'm only going to review the marked questions. I'm not going to review all questions. There are some I know I got right. I'm not going to go over them again. Now, when I'm reviewing the marked questions, and I'm going to say this again later, be very careful about changing your answer. Most people lower their score by changing their answers. Please be aware of that. So I'm going to tell you Peter's rule of thumb for the tests I take. I will only change the answer in 2 circumstances. Number 1, I read the question wrong. And now that I read it, oh, it's an accept question. They're looking for the wrong answer. Then I will change the answer if I read the question wrong. The other one is I just don't know the answer. And believe it or not, this will happen to you if you keep your eyes open. I'll just make up a scenario. Say I'm studying property and casualty, and I know most of you aren't, but and they ask a question about a homeowner's policy, and I just can't remember the answer. Later on in the test, what often happens is the word or the phrase or the concept you want is in another question that comes up later. Oh, that's a homeowner's 5. That's what I was looking for. You take your pencil and your paper they give you, write it down. When I go back to that question, I now know the answer because I found it out. If I read the question wrong or I found out the answer as I took the test, those are the 2 times I changed my answer. That's it. If I'm going to get into the emotions of I feel insecure, and I just start changing answers because of my insecurity and lack of confidence, you will lower your grade. So be careful about that. I do want you to review the marked questions, but change the answers rarely. Okay. Short answer test tips. I've already told you this one, folks. Make flashcards. Make flashcards of key words that you need to know the definition of, dates, and numbers. You're going to get number questions on your test. How long is your license good for? How much continuing ed do you need? Write numbers on flashcards. And because numbers, you either know it or you don't, right? So make sure you know it. When I say anticipate questions, the stuff that Melissa teaches, the stuff that I teach you, this is the stuff that most commonly shows up on the test. So focus on the stuff we tell you. I'm not telling you not to study everything, but I am telling you what Melissa and I cover is what happens on most tests. So be aware of that. Let's talk about test anxiety. Believe it or not, my friends, test anxiety does have a positive ring to it. One of the things that test anxiety does is it creates an extra flow of adrenaline, which ignites our energies and it makes us more alert. Performers, singers, dancers, actors, athletes, to perform at the highest level, they always get anxious before. You could call it nervous, insecure, whatever you want. The nerves are kind of like this. That's not all bad. That means you're ready to go now. Okay. So don't look at it as a negative, but think positive. Don't take that anxiety and say, oh, I'm never going to pass this test. Forget that. That language is forbidden. Okay. You've studied hard. Replace all your negative thoughts. Learn how to relax. Breathing techniques. Okay. Sometimes during the test, you need to just sit back and say, wow, I've had 3 hard questions in a row. I'm starting to get a little freaked out. Stop. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Think of your favorite song. and tell yourself, I've studied this hard. I'm okay. I'm going to keep going. You don't need to get 100 to pass the test. You miss a couple questions, you're still okay. Now, multiple choice, true, false matching. Remember this. They give you the question, they also give you the answer. It's staring right at you. It's just among four answers. Your job is not to explain anything. There's no essay questions in the test. It's to discover and find the correct answer. It's kind of like a little mystery. The question's got the clues. I got to find out which is the answer to that question. The first technique I want you to be aware of is the technique, and many of you will probably already do this. Eliminate answers you know can't be right. There are some answers there that don't answer the question at all, or they're just clearly incorrect. Take them out. If I got four answers and two of them are clearly wrong, do you know how much I increased my odds? Instead of 1 out of 4, I now have a chance of 1 out of 2. Okay, that's a much higher chance of finding the right answer. So the first thing I want you to do is make sure you eliminate those answers that cannot possibly be true. Now, the questions break into 3 categories. Terminology. What is terminology? Folks, you got to know the vocabulary of insurance. Insurance is not hard. What makes the test difficult is the stupid language they use, right? They use words nobody uses. Who talks like this? Indemnity, subrogation, non-forfeiture. Nobody. You're not going to be standing in line at the movie theater and hear those words at all, but we got to know them for the test. So make sure you learn as much of the language as possible. Think about you're learning a foreign language. The more of the language you understand, the easier it is to understand the question and the easier it is to get the answer. Vocabulary, number 1. Number and day questions. They need to go on flashcards. If you're having trouble remembering how long something is, how long your free look is, or how long your grace periods are, put them on flashcards. Read them out loud every day. You'll get them all right. Okay? Now, this third one is where people end up passing or failing. Critical reasoning questions. They take things you know and put them into a scenario. And you got to take the stuff you know, and in that scenario, what works. That takes some thinking, but it's not impossible, for goodness sakes. Something you can do. Critical reasoning questions. It requires you to draw on your knowledge to reach a practical solution. Usually it's in a story form. They'll tell you about Charles Smith bought a policy on such and such date. And then they'll give you a scenario and they got to say, how much will the insurance company pay? Something like that. When taking the exam, it's vital to pay utmost attention to the details in the questions, as the details are what throw us off. If you are a detective or you're watching a detective murder movie, watch the clues, okay? Same game. When you're taking the test and you get these questions, pay attention to the clues. The rules of test taking. Mark questions you're not sure of and review them before you close the exam. Heard this before? I do repeat myself on important stuff. Be very careful about changing your answers, as usually people lower their grade by changing their answer. Only change if you originally misread the question or you now remember the correct answer. You studied hard, trust yourself. First impulse is usually we spell it better, correct, okay? How to properly read and answer different types of questions. A clue. And I'm going to give you some examples here so you don't have to be imagining things. If you get opposite answers, the sun rises in the east, the sun rises in the west. One of them's true and one of them's false. They're opposites. Do you know what that means? One of those two is the answer. You know those other two answers? Forget them. When you've got opposites, you find out which one's true and which one's false. And what does the question want? They want the true one or the false one. When you get opposites, look at that, and that's good because now you're just going to figure out what is true or false. I think I got an example next. Yeah, let's look at this. By the way, my questions were picked from property and casualty, life and health, and you're going to say, Peter, I never studied that. That's terrific. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to show you can answer questions you've never heard of before and get them right if you follow these techniques, okay? And if you get 10 flaming, horribly difficult questions, use these techniques, you will be surprised. You end up getting 5 or 6 of them right. And those are your hardest questions. If you do that, you're going to pass the test, right? Okay, here's an example. Which is not a characteristic of insurance? And we're given 4 options here: unilateral, personal, bilateral, adhesion. So what I want to point out to you is the rule of opposites. Unilateral and bilateral are opposites. One is one person is required to do something, and the other, both parties are required. One of those is true, and one of those is false. So in this question, I'm going to disregard 2 and 3. Now it says which is not a characteristic of insurance. Now, if you've studied hard, you know that unilateral is. So bilateral is the correct answer. So all I did here is I just made sure I recognized the rule of opposites. So I said, I'm not even going to care about adhesion and personal. The one that's wrong is either uni or bi. Okay. So look for opposites. You're not going to get a ton of them, but you'll get some in the test. If you know the answer to the question, you don't need to apply the rule. Fantastic. You studied hard. But sometimes knowing this rule will help you grab the correct answer. And so it goes with all the rules I'm going to share with you. Accept questions study tip. Accept questions are looking for the wrong answer. Sometimes they'll say look for the right answer. But what I want to talk to you about right now is when you get a question like that on a practice test. What most people do is they get their answer, I got it right, I got it wrong, and then I go on. You're missing a great opportunity to learn something. Whenever you get a question like that, you should look at the 3 answers that you didn't choose and learn from them. So let me be clear with an example. So again, if you're thinking property and casualty, don't worry. The dwelling policy one, all of the following are covered perils except. Now, what happens is you're taking a practice exam and you're not sure and you make a guess or something like that. So what you find out that burglary is the one that's not covered. All right, I got to learn that. I write down my notes and stuff like that and I move on. No, don't move on. Because you have a treasure chest right here. What you can learn is that fire, internal explosion, and lightning are covered on a DP1. Now, it doesn't matter if you're not taking property and casualty. If I am, I'm going to make sure that I know the 3 perils the DP1 covers because it's told to me in this question. And if I learn these 3, no matter how they ask me about a DP1, I know more than just burglaries not covered. I actually know 3 that are covered. Now you can take this no matter what you're studying for. On the accept questions, look at the answers that you didn't choose. They are all correct. Did you know they were all correct? Good. If you didn't, make a note and learn it. These 3 are correct answers. They are covered. So it doesn't matter what you're studying. These are all things that you can with accept questions. Watch for a double negative. Okay, now we don't get many double negatives on the test, but if you took math, you know a double negative equals a positive. So what am I saying? Read this question. Representative cannot do all except. Wow, that's a messed up question, man. I can't do all except. What they're really saying is, what's the one thing you can do? That's what the answer to this question is. They're not asking you for what you can't do, is an accept. So this is a nasty question. You have to be on your toes to recognize it. Representative cannot do all except. So that means one of these things you actually can do. So watch out for double negatives. They're not often on there. And maybe you didn't even need this rule to get this one right. Okay. But going through different things that can trick you on the test. You see, these test people are not nice people. They don't want 100% of the people passing the test. So they will use tricks and deceptive and crappy questions to try to get you discouraged. Don't let them ever discourage you. In this example, the one thing an agent can do is mail a policy. What they can't do is rebate, twist, or sign for an absent spouse. Okay. Now, I could have gotten this question right by just using elimination. But I wanted you to be aware sometimes you will get a double negative in the question. But remember, elimination. Eliminate the wrong answers. That will help you a lot. Time for a commercial. YouTube, Insurance Exam Clean, click on join and see how you can get all of Peter's classes at a very, very small cost. Ad is over. Ding. Multiple facts in the question disguising the real question. This is a doozy. Don't worry if you're not taking property and casualty. Recognize how the test people put a whole bunch of stuff up there. Okay, just a whole bunch of stuff. Thanks for the super chat, by the way. I think that's what I thank you very much. Charlie buys a personal auto policy on March 1st. So you start thinking, okay, they're going to want to know when does his coverage start. Read the whole question before you start answering a question that wasn't asked. The agent binds the coverage on March 1st. Okay. On March 10th, Charlie adds a second car when he gets married. Coverage to his first auto is in what part of the policy? Well, let me just tell you, this is a messed up question. The whole first three lines have nothing to do with the question. It's just information about Charlie's love life and when he bought the policy. Okay. The whole question is in coverage on his first auto. Where is it covered in the policy? Part A, supplementary, B, or D? Now, if you're not taking property and casualty, you don't care. That's fine. I just want you to see how sometimes they will bury the real question amongst a bunch of nonsense. Okay. Now, if you are taking property and casualty, and I don't think any of you are, coverage to the auto is Part D on an auto policy. Who cares? I will go along with you on that. What I wanted you to know isn't the answer to the question. It's the question and how they bury their question with a lot of other facts, which is why I told you at the beginning. Read every question twice, slowly, and then say, what's the question? What is the question here? Is it when did Charlie get married? No, it is auto. Where is it covered on the policy? What part of the policy? That's the whole question, right? So they're not below making these silly kind of things for you. Also, let's pay attention to unimportant facts or distractions. In this part, notice his date of coverage isn't important. Second car is not important because they ask about the first car. Getting married is not important. So they put in unimportant facts to distract you. Let me go back to the mystery. There are clues that come up in solving this murder mystery that will take you down the wrong path. Okay. They're just there to distract you. So don't let that happen to you. Let's see. I don't know what state you're in, Siobhan. Um, there's a sheet that the state gives you of how many questions you get and what's a passing grade. Um, we have them if you want to ask us to get you we just need to know what state you're in and what test you're taking, but it's different for different property and casualty, personal lines, property and casualty, personal and commercial, life only, health only, life and health together. So, I mean, it depends what you're taking and what state you're in. Okay. That is a long-winded answer. I specialize in long-winded answer. What's the real question about Charlie? Where's his car covered? Complete this sentence. This is another common type of question. Let's just look at this one. A hazard is a golf term. That's true. If you've ever played golf, there are golf hazards. Increases the probability of a loss. Pay attention to all the words. They use probability. Unimportant. Only applies to dwelling policies. So what am I going to teach you from the question? Let's just go over stuff we already know. Eliminate clearly wrong answers. So there's two answers that can't be right. They're not going to ask you about golf in an insurance exam. Okay. It's not unimportant. For goodness sakes, we wouldn't be studying hazard if it didn't mean anything. So the first step is eliminate. That leaves me with two answers. So you just increase the odds of you're getting right if you use eliminate on every single question you get. Look for clues in the question. They are often there in plain sight if you look. Okay, here's a question where there are clues in it. Interline endorsements. I hope none of you are taking P&C, so you have no idea what we're talking about. But you can see how this rule will help you. Interline endorsements. Geographic rates, illegal, CPP policy, only used by alien companies. So here's what you don't do. You don't say, Peter, I have no idea. I haven't picked three in a while. I'm picking three. Don't do that. Okay. Apply some sort of method to your questions. Look at the word interline. That means that a line is covered, I think, in different types of policies or something. I mean, interline, I'm just using English here. Interline probably means more than one line of coverage. So that's a clue. Eliminate. Illegal and only used by alien companies. It can't be illegal. Number one, you wouldn't study it. Number two, alien, domestic, foreign has nothing to do with this. Who would use an interline endorsement? Okay. Now I increased my my odds, right? So all I'm saying to you folks, don't give up on a question, even when you don't even have any idea what it's doing. Okay. Now, the question answer has nothing to do with geographic rates either. You know, where you live can affect your interline endorsements. So by elimination, CPP is the only answer. But all I'm saying to you is I'm not trying to teach any insurance here, not life, health, property and casualty. I'm trying to teach you how to attack a question, especially those questions that are really, really difficult. Okay, now we got the overthinker. Some of you people in this class are overthinkers. Overthinkers mess up themselves. So here's a question. And then I'm going to show you what an overthinker does. In a whole life policy, when does cash value equal the death benefit? Age 65, age 100. It can vary when the policyholder decides. Now, overthinker changes the question in their mind. So here's the example. Answer the question as it's written. So here's overthinker. What if it's a mutual company and they pay dividends? Then it could vary. It could be number 4. And if you got dividends and you apply them, do you see what you're doing? You're changing the question. They will give you all the information you need in the question. Don't overthink it. Do not change the question to fit an answer. Answer the question exactly as it's written. So overthinkers find themselves doing that. They create a scenario. What if they're really talking about a universal life? What would happen there? That's not the question. Okay? Stick with what's given to you and answer the question as. This I talked about before. Sometimes you get information on one question that will help you answer a question you had before. So here's one. You get a question about the perils covered in a DP1. I don't know if you remember, but we already had that question. It was an accept question. Burglary's not covered, okay? You're not sure. Later on, you get this question. Which peril is not covered in a DP1? Fire, all perils, lightning, and internal explosion. Well, if I studied that question properly, I would have, and I'm not expecting you guys to know this now, I would have learned that fire, lightning, and internal explosion are all covered on the DP1, but not all perils. Okay? Now, I know you're saying, Peter, I don't care. If you're not taking P&C, I don't want you to care. Okay? I'm just trying to share with you some tips. Rationale. A, C, and D are covered perils on a DP1. Write it down. Check out how you answered the first question on DP1 in the perils covered. Which peril is not covered? All. It doesn't cover all perils. That's going to get me to a rule very, very quickly. Let me just see. I'm sorry for this cutting out. If I was doing that, I would confess, but I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. Practice. The deductible does each of these except reduce low loss costs, lower premium costs, indemnify the insured, excludes payments for small claims. Now, I know it's the end of a long day. Probably several of you are saying right now, I don't care. I don't have the energy to look this up. That won't work when you're taking the state exam. But let's look at this. Did you eliminate B, C, and D? The deductible does each of these except. Does it? It does. So in other words, 3 of them it does. It does lower your premium costs. Indemnify the insured, excludes payment for small claims. It actually does that. Okay. Does it reduce loss costs? If my loss is I broke my arm and I got to pay the doctor $600, the size of my deductible doesn't change my loss costs at all. Okay. So that's the correct answer. Does it indemnify the insurer? Yes. Insurance is a contract of indemnity. They will pay up to the claim, but never more than the claim. What does that have to do with anything? It has to do with language. Remember, learn your vocabulary. Don't go into the test and not know what indemnity means. okay, or any of the other words that Melissa and I use a lot. A chance of a windstorm causing a loss to one's property. Is it a risk? Is it uninsurable? Is it a hazard or a peril? Let me just go to the next question. This is an important of learning your vocabulary. What's in the vocabulary? Peril, risk, a loss, hazards. Those are already at the beginning of the course. We have to know those, okay? And risk is always the chance. We don't have a loss yet, but there's a chance you could have one, right? I haven't had a car accident this year. Is there a chance you could have a car accident coming up? That's risk, okay? And if you remember when we studied this, we take and transfer that risk from us to the insurance company when we purchase insurance. Risk is a chance, the possibility. All right. So I just wanted you to know and mind you, please learn your vocabulary. Um, each of the following involves a pure risk except bodily injury, drought, loss in the stock market, and flood. Pure risks are things we can get insurance for. Speculative risk, we cannot. And that's gambling. Losing in the stock market, we can't get insurance for that. It's a speculative risk. Can we get flood insurance? Drought insurance? I've never heard of drought insurance, but you can. Bodily injury, but I can't protect losses like gambling losses or things like that. I said that wrong. Of course, you can protect losses. Your car gets wrecked, you have medical bills, those are losses, but not speculative losses. Okay. Peter, you were really fun for a while, but you're getting boring. Sometimes insurance words get incredibly boring, and there's nothing Melissa and I can do about that. But you got to know them for the test. Okay. Another accept rule. One of the things that just doesn't belong. Okay, let me tell you this story. This is a little humor, maybe. When I was raising my kids 100 years ago, we would watch a TV show called Sesame Street. And I remember one day sitting there with the children and they sang this song. I actually used this to make up this rule. One of these things just doesn't belong here. One of these things just isn't the same. And then they would parade out 3 chickens and a duck. They didn't look alike. Okay, the duck was bigger, it was a different color, and the little kids would say, that one doesn't belong here, doesn't belong here. Do you know there are some times in a question you can use this silly Sesame Street song to find the answer? I don't guess I didn't give an example, but let me go back. Look for it. Sometimes you'll say, 3 of these things are about the insured, and one is the insurance company. Is one answer here just is standing out? Is that important? Maybe that's the answer. Maybe let's read the question. Okay. So you have to use some discernment that you just don't, do silly things about it. This one important. I actually had to take a test on something I didn't care anything about, and I could take it an unlimited amount of times. So I didn't even study. I just said, I'm just going to go in there. And what I did is all these rules I'm teaching you today, I used on this test. And I ended up passing it, didn't even know what I was talking about. All, none, always, never, only are what we call absolute words. There's no exceptions here. It's always this way. No exceptions. None, not even one. Right? You see how they're so absolute? Very few things in life are absolute. Some things are, but very few are. When you see a question that uses an absolute word, be suspicious. It's probably wrong. Just be aware of that. I think I put an example of that. I did. Which is not true. Dwelling policy 1 is a named peril policy. Dwelling policies are always for landlords. Not true. Dwelling policy 3 is open peril on dwelling. Dwelling policies do not cover liabilities. So, which is not true is probably B. Why? Always. Always for landlords. It ends up it's not true. Why did I know that? From the absolute rule. Okay. So now I know a lot of the questions don't pertain to you. I actually did that on purpose. I wanted you to pay attention not so much to the insurance question as to the rules we use to get a better grade. Okay. Insured must be notified in advance if a character is to be checked. Is that free look, grace period, Fair Credit Reporting Act, or reinstatement? So it's the Fair Credit Reporting Act. I think what we can, I don't know, maybe did I put the reasoning here? No, I did not. I think what I found out in here is this is one of these things just doesn't belong here. The free look, the grace period, and reinstatement are all provisions in insurance policies that inform the insured how his policy works. The Fair Credit Reporting Act is something the insurance company does to see if they want to insure you or not. It's really quite different than the other three. The other three are part of the policy, but the Fair Credit Reporting Act is not in the policy. So I think what I used here is one of these things just doesn't belong here. How are premiums for individually owned disability income policies, one of the most hated questions people have, treated for tax purposes? Not tax deductible at all. Amount spent over 7.5% of income is tax deductible, partially deductible, fully taxable. My friends, if you've been with me, and I know a lot of you haven't been for the whole time I've been talking, what we have here is rule number 1. There are two opposites in this question, okay? Not tax deductible or fully tax deductible. It's got to be one or the other. There's no partial tax deductible, okay? So it's one of these two. Now, if you've studied, you know the right answer. Individually owned disability policies, you don't tax deduct the premium. But if you didn't know that, it's fine. I just wanted you to note that you get closer to your answer and you don't start worrying, gee, what is it about 7.5% I was supposed to know? You maybe don't even have to go there because you're sitting on two opposites here. Okay? Not tax deductible at all. When the question is not recognizable at all, you use all these little clues I taught you to help. And here is an example. This has nothing to do with insurance at all. Which of the following was a factor in passing the Social Security Act? Families living in closer proximity to each other. Which of the following was a factor in passing Social Security? A trend to rural rather than urban living, the economic turmoil and instability of the Great Depression, or low confidence in the president. So, what's my point? Clues. Passing an act. What would have been a factor in getting an act to pass? Eliminate. People weren't leaving the city to go back on the farm. It was the opposite. So I throw out B. Low confidence in the president. I don't know how much you know about history, but this president got elected 4 times. Okay, it's probably not that. So it could be families are living closer to each other, so they passed this act, or economic turmoil and instability, which is more likely that there was so much problems they needed a law. But notice the good news is I was able to get rid of 2 answers so I could focus on it using eliminate. Choose between A and C. What do you need to pass a law? Okay. Economic turmoil and instability is a good reason. All right. Another practice. Which country is in Africa? Paris, Sudan, Mexico, and Qatar. Country, Africa. That's our clues. My friends, Paris and Mexico are impossible. One is a city, and I think most of us know that Mexico is not in Africa. So now what am I doing? I'm guessing between the two. All I did was increase my adds. Which is Sudan or Qatar? I guess they call it Qatar in Africa. We really don't care if you know it or not. I just wanted you to know the process to get me closer to the answer. Pay attention to the clues in the question. Remember, the goal of the state that's giving you this test is to protect the public. So sometimes all you need to do is say which of these answers most protects the public, because that's probably going to be the right answer, unless they're asking for the wrong answer. But just know the state hires your test company to give you the test. They want more than anything to protect the public. They don't want dummies selling insurance. So they hire this test company to screen people out. Nobody here's a dummy. Don't be insulted. So what is their goal? Make sure the public gets protected. Sometimes just reminding yourself of that helps you find the right answer. When studying, somebody asked a question earlier and I didn't answer. How many questions are on my test? Every one of you should get a hold of the sheet that's published by your state that tells you how many questions are on your test and how many questions come from each chapter that you studied. If you don't have that, write to Insurance Exam Queen and request it for your state. But you got to have that, because what's going to happen on that chapter and that piece of paper is you're going to see which chapters are going to give you the most questions. I don't know if you like football or follow football, but in football, the teams study game films of their future opponent. Why? They want to know what the opponent's plays are, what they're likely to see. This is your game film. They will literally tell you how many questions come from each chapter. Why is that so helpful? It was for me. I just looked at which chapters are asking me the most questions, and that's where I started studying the hardest. I mean, if you're going fishing and there's a guy on the lake who lives on the lake and he says, "Do you want to know where the fish are today?" Heck yeah. And he takes you to where the fish are. If you know where the questions are coming from, that's where the fish are. That's where you can get the most points. So find out which chapters ask you the most questions and start with those chapters and spend more study time on those chapters than the ones that may only ask you 2 or 3 questions. Study every chapter, but emphasize the ones that are going to give you the most questions. It's not uncommon that when you look at that list, you'll see 3 of the chapters are half your test. 3. There might be 10 or 12 chapters, and 3 of them are going to have half your questions. For goodness sakes, I am parking my car near those 3 and getting them as clear as possible. Summary. Oh, this is where you take pictures of the slides, by the way. Okay, just to remind you what we did. Find the question that's being asked. Look for clues in the question. Eliminate wrong answers. Look for opposite choices. One of these things just doesn't belong here. Please use flashcards to learn numbers and key facts. So I'm going to go through these 2 slides one more time so that you can take pictures. My whole class on 2 slides. Find the question that's being asked. They will disguise the question sometimes. Look for clues in the question that can bring you to your answer. Eliminate wrong answers. Look for opposites. If you find opposites, one of them's right, one of them's wrong, the other two you could throw out. Okay. One of these things just doesn't belong here. May help you on a question or two. It's not a primary thing. Use flashcards to learn numbers, key facts. I should add another one, vocabulary. Okay. Folks, this is my final ad. YouTube, Insurance Exam Clean, click on join and you'll see all the classes I teach available for like 25 bucks if you want it. I want to thank you for your attention and I want to wish you all a nice evening. I haven't listed my live classes for the month of February. That will be up sometime tomorrow. I'll be getting that all set up. So I will be coming back with more live classes. I imagine now the class is over and say we were live and you're picking up your books to go home and enjoy your evening. I'm still here. So if you want to come to the teacher and say, hey, teach, I got a question. And maybe it's about something we didn't even cover. Maybe it's about something you're studying and you don't want it explained better. I can stay around for a couple minutes if you want to just shoot questions at me. And if I can help clarify something, I'll be glad to do that. In the meantime, for you, those of you who are leaving, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate the super chats and look for us. I'm going to be back. I got to get my schedule and hone in on which classes we're going to be doing. So I wish you all the best of luck. Use us. Let us help you pass the test. Okay. Okay. Ryan has a question. Is this Arizona, Ryan? Okay. Can you give me an example of a question that the state answer is different than the general answer? I don't know if I have an example on that. State questions always pertain to rules in the state. Now, where you'll see it different from state to state is oftentimes in what we call the regulations, state regulations chapter. I'll give you a couple examples. Some states have different times for the free look. Some states have different times for grace periods. Okay. Some states have different rules about first offense of twisting or rebating, how much a fine is. Things like that are always found in your regulations chapter. Okay. In the text you're studying from. So that's about, I don't know if that's very helpful, Ryan, but those are the kinds of things. K Afrins, I hope you didn't come here thinking we were getting started because we started an hour ago. I'm so sorry if that's true. Anybody else got a question? Maybe I can do a better job than I did with Ryan. Well, all of you have a wonderful evening. Stay healthy. Study every single day. Till you pass that test, you should study something every single day. Thanks for the compliments. Hopefully I can see you guys again. Well, if you don't come back because you passed, that's great. Okay. But I'll be around. We'll be doing more live classes in the future. And thank you very much for your time. I thought it was life and health. Anyways, I'll check into it, Kay. All right. Thanks, guys. You all have a great day. There is a subscription for PNC, I think, with Melissa. That's a little different price. You want to know the difference between an underwriter and an agent? Kay, I'm pretty sure if you go on Join, you'll see an offer from me for life and health and from Melissa for PNC. Okay, I'm pretty sure. Or you can buy Melissa's package, gold package for PNC too. Let me go back to the question about underwriter and agent. Well, it's a little confusing because I'm going to call myself an agent, okay? We are also called field underwriters. So in a sense, we're part of the underwriting team. The process, an agent or a producer solicits the sale of insurance. Okay, so we're out selling. But when we take an application, we are called a field underwriter because we collect information which will then be sent to the company underwriter. The company underwriter will decide if they want to take the risk and at what rate. Okay, the underwriting process is a process insurance companies use to decide if you're insurable or not and at what price. That's the underwriting process. As an agent, we participate in this process as the field underwriter. We take the initial information, but we don't make the decision. It goes to the company underwriter. Well, they'll decide whether they're going to take the risk or not. So I hope that clarifies the use of the terms. We participate in the underwriting process, but make no decisions. Our primary role is the solicitation of insurance. Okay. Anybody else want something I can do for you? I'm in Arizona. Can the P&C test be taken in two parts, like life and health? I think you can take personal lines only, where you don't have to study any of the commercial policies, or you can take commercial and personal lines together. I think that's the way it is. You would know by going to the testing service in Arizona that's Prometric and looking at the tests that are available. Okay. I know they offer personal lines only, so you don't have to learn the commercial policies. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great evening and study every single day. Do you know where any good study materials are for life and health for free? Ain't nothing free in the world. No, I don't. I mean, if you want study supplies, you've got to buy them from somebody. Melissa did work out a discount if you want to buy the Excel package. You can find that on her website. But there's a lot of them out there, but I don't know any that are free. All right. Good night, everybody. Everybody take care of yourselves and study every day. Bye now.